Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Reiki Lifestyle Podcast. Colleen and I, again, are very excited for our guest today, Frans Stiene. You want to say hi, Frans?
Hey, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Really excited to be here and looking forward to talking to you both.
Yeah.
We're really excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah. And so as far as Colleen and I are concerned, y'all know where to find us, ReikiLifestyle.com, and all the things, our classes, Next Up Reiki, Animal Reiki, all of those kinds of things are at ReikiLifestyle.com. So we kind of just want to get into today's guest and today's topic. So I'm going to go ahead and just introduce Frans and his bio. And we're here today actually because he has a new book. And so we're going to be getting into talking about that as well. All right, so Frans Stiene has been a major influence on global research in the system of Reiki since the early 2000s. His practical understanding of the Japanese influences on the system have allowed students around the world to connect deeply with this practice. Frans is a co-founder of the International House of Reiki. And Frans, can you...
Shibumi Reiki Association.
Shibumi Reiki. Okay, thank you. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure that I was saying it correctly. With Bronwen Logan, Stiene, he has also co-authored with her the critically acclaimed books, the Reiki Sourcebook, the Japanese Art of Reiki, A to Z of Reiki Pocketbook, Reiki Techniques Card Deck, and Your Reiki Treatment. His own books are The Inner Heart of Reiki and Reiki Insights. So we'll also say this at the end, but his website or their website is ihreiki.com, International House of Reiki. Email is frans@ihreiki.com, and then can be found on Facebook as Frans Stiene, and that's Stiene.
IENE.
Thank you. IENE.
That's it.
We'll put it all in the show notes. You can find it in the show notes. And then his YouTube is International House of Reiki. So today, why we are here is his book, The Way of Reiki, The Inner Teachings of Mikao Usui by Frans Stiene. In his new book, The Way of Reiki, Frans Stiene shows us the many layers of Mikao Usui's teachings. It's written in an understandable and clear way through which he encourages us to walk the way of Reiki. The Way of Reiki guides us on a path to becoming a better human being, softening our anger and worry so that we can live in a world of compassion and kindness. It is a must read for any Reiki practitioner or teacher who wants to bring more love into their practice, teachings, and the world. And it was just released in October of 2022. So sorry, I messed up some of those things, but welcome. We are so excited. And I agree with the, what was said about your book. Just absolutely loved it. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was exciting to write it, and it's exciting to share, these kind of teachings, and absolutely.
Yeah, I bet.
It's a really good book.
Yeah.
I am still reading it and I love every part of it. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for capturing so much of the essence of Reiki energy and the precepts and the history. It's so important that this work is there. So, and then I do just want to say real quickly, you can get it on Amazon. So
absolutely.
Good call.
Anyway, go ahead, Robyn.
Well, I was just going to ask Frans, we're kind of curious too about your history with Reiki and, what led you to Reiki and to your practice as well.
Yeah, I'm 56 now, and when in my early 20s, actually late 20s, I was a party animal. I didn't really was interested in spirituality per se, just drinking, partying, dancing. That was my lifestyle. A bit of work, as we all have to work, but So since I was 16, I had actually back problems. So they put me into plaster from my neck up to my hip for 9-10 weeks or something like that. And so I always suffered from 16 till I was 30 from quite sometimes really heavy back problems where I would have physiotherapy, painkillers, could hardly walk. And the doctors was always saying that, it will progressively get worse. And it did in my late 20s. And I was living in Holland at that time and decided to get rid of everything here and travel to India or Asia for a while and then go to Australia. Bronwen was from Australia. And so we moved to India. And then when I was leaving Holland, I didn't really feel my emotional, mental state was in a very good place. And so the first kind of month we traveled up to the Himalayas and we lived there for a while. And I wasn't doing that well physically and mentally. And so I bumped into this American guy, actually. His name was Curtis. And he said, oh, there is this local healer doing some healings. He was like what they call in the Himalayas in that particular area, a Lamo, if I remember it correctly. And they are very specific female healers, shamans. And so when there, we were not allowed to participate. The room was full of local people and she called them one by one and she did something. And it was about 5 foreigners. And almost at the end, she said something and it was translated in English. And I said, oh, you have to come. And I go like, okay. So I point towards my back and she touches me and something very deep inside me happened. And then the next day, not necessarily that I felt healed or better, but all I wanted to do was buy books on spirituality. And it happened that like maybe a few months, no, not even a few, like a month later, I happened to stumble on a book about Reiki and I started to do hands-on healing on myself. And then I go like, well, this looks interesting. Maybe I should find a Reiki teacher. And then we lived in Nepal and I found a Reiki teacher there, an English guy. He was very funny. He was smoking pot while I was teaching. And the classes were a bit so-so, but I enjoyed it. And then one thing led to another. And so that was kind of the beginning of my journey.
Interesting. Well, Colleen spent some time in the Himalayas as well.
I did.
Oh, it's beautiful there. Yeah. Where have you been?
Well, we flew into Nepal. It was a shamanic journey. And flew into Nepal and stayed there for a while. And we were with a shaman, a Nepali shaman, Bola Banstola. And so we did ceremony there and then flew into Lhasa. And we were able to spend time in Lhasa and again in ceremony and traveled through the Himalayas on the Friendship Highway. Back through to the other side and then flew back from the border. So we were probably in Nepal for, up in Tibet for maybe 7 days.
Oh, beautiful.
It's been a while.
Yeah,
it was beautiful.
Gorgeous. Yeah. I love it there. Yeah. In the end, I actually lived there for 2 years. So
you did.
Wow.
Yeah. I can see why. It's the energy there and the beauty and the people. It's extraordinary, really.
Yeah, it taught me a lot, actually. Where I lived for a year in Darjeeling in the Himalayas, a lot of local healers. And to actually watch them and to talk to them and to see what their practice was very insightful. And was actually also a trigger for me to go to Japan and find out actually what the heritage was of Mikao Usui's teachings and the system of Reiki, because I became very intrigued by that.
Well, it sounds like when the woman touched you, it feels like it sent a light all the way through your body to.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, to call you. Yeah.
Oh, then how did you know, as far as like Reiki, it sounds like then eventually went to Japan and you were called to do that. So what called you to Reiki specifically too, and kind of hone in as one of your practices?
Yeah, I'm not really sure, really. I quite liked when I was reading this first book, it was written by an Indian person, and it was very kind of Indian kind of rules with it as well, what is a little bit different. So I don't know, there was something in it, what I felt called upon. And then when I was living in Darjeeling, after I've done Reiki 1, 2, and 3 in Nepal, Kathmandu, while I was living there, and I started to meet these local healers, and a lot of them also did forms of hands-on healing. And the quality, the depth, what came from their hands-on healing was very, very different than I had experienced with my Reiki teacher or people who I met along the line who are practicing the system of Reiki, or my own. And the main reason when I talked to those people was that they had a very strict meditation practice. And so I was wondering why, particularly when I first learned the system of Reiki, that was not taught. You get the attunement and get some symbols and voila, you do some hands-on healing on yourself, you might fall asleep and that's it. So I wanted to know why, if this was so, particularly how I learned it in the beginning was very much focused on hands-on healing, then why the quality of that, if I received hands-on healing from these local healers in the area where I lived, was so much more potent, open, insightful, very different depth, and why then very specific meditation practices weren't taught within the system of Reiki. So that was kind of my call to go to Japan and investigate that, and to see if it was always based on hands-on healing, or if indeed there were actually very specific meditation practices, but maybe they had never really come to the West, or maybe not even taught within the Japanese Reiki communities.
So how did you find the Reiki community that you found in Japan?
Oh, that's a good question. So the first time I went to Japan in 2001, and I met with a person who was at that time a member of the Usui Reiki Ryogakai and another Reiki teacher. And we talked a lot, we chatted for a while, and then I met with another Japanese Reiki teacher who travels the world as well, and did his class. And I still wasn't really satisfied what I was looking for. I was still trying to look for something more in depth. And that was my journey. We all have different journeys. One is not better than the other. So then in 2003, I went back, met up with more Reiki teachers, did another class with another Japanese Reiki teacher. And again, I was still not finding what I was looking for, and kept researching. And so, for example, there is a wonderful book, it's called by John Harvey Gray. And in it, he describes that he has lots of tapes of Mrs. Takada, for example. And he says in his book that on one of the tapes, Mrs. Takada is speaking about that she went to Japan and met with Japanese Reiki teachers who were practicing Reiki very differently than she had learned, and that it was highly complex, that it took years to learn, and that it was very much interwoven with religious Japanese practices. And so I couldn't still find that in my early research in Japan in 2000, from 2001 onwards. And then in 2012, I was introduced to a Japanese priest, and he started to really show me and explain to me the tools, what we can find within the system of Reiki. So in Reiki 2, we have these 3 symbols and mantras. And in Reiki 3, we have a symbol and mantra, and then Reiju and the precepts. And so he started to really explain and show me where these tools also have been used in Japanese esoteric teachings. And I started to rediscover that it was very common in Mikao Usui's time to borrow from these Japanese esoteric teachings and simplify it so that people who were not a monk or a nun could really access that really inner great luminosity within themselves without belonging to a Buddhist organization or a Shinto organization, without a dogma. And it was very common at that time in the late 1800s, beginning 1900s in Japan to do this. Mikao Usui was not alone. There were thousands of those kind of teachers. Some actually became hugely popular. Mikao Usui only had like 2,000 students. There were people at that time who had like 500,000 students. And they also practiced all sorts of forms of hands-on healing, what was very interesting.
And so then once you found that teacher, it took you deeper into your own practices?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, much, much deeper. Yeah. And that was really what I was looking for, to find where Mikao Usui took the system from. And it's not a specific complex system in a way, but he took several different elements from Shintoism, from Shugendo, from Tendai. These practices are still used in these kind of traditions, and formulated his own style, so to speak. And again, that was very popular at that time to do this. And all of these teachers formulated it slightly different. Some became very religious, some became very open, like Mikao Usui's teaching. Some focused a little bit more on hands-on healing. Some focused more on your own direct experience of your great bright light. And then again, often when those founders have passed away, then things started to change as well again. For example, we can see this in many traditions now. If we look at yoga, for example, we only have to type in yoga on Instagram and it looks more like aerobics than that it is a self-awakening program, right? Or teaching. So, yeah.
So then how did you evolve with your teachings from way back at the beginning and to, you know, this meeting in 2012 and that study, to really so much of it, I think, is expressed in your book, The Way of Reiki?
Yeah, to really see it from something like when I first was taught the system of Reiki, then Reiki was something externally, you know, it was something what was hanging out there somewhere, to really realize that we are Reiki. So traditionally, the word Reiki was like Buddha nature, or in Japanese sometimes called kami, a divine being. What is you? And so that we, even Mrs. Takada, I think in 1937 or 36, I can't remember the exact date, in a diary, she actually writes that Reiki is within ourselves and that it lies at the bottom of our stomach, that we have to concentrate to let it come out. So she wrote about it already. And yet, over time, it became more and more externalized. And also the concentration, meditation element became kind of lost a little bit. It's coming back now, what is wonderful. And we start to see that it's actually important as a practitioner, and a practitioner doesn't mean necessarily doing hands-on healing on other people, but for yourself, that it is such an important element. And we only have to look at the precepts, for example, do not anger, do not worry, be grateful, practice diligently, or be true to your way and your being, and show compassion to yourself and others. That is not easy, right? It's not an easy thing to come by, and that we really have to apply many different practices to be able to bring that in our daily life.
Well, oh, go ahead, Colleen.
No, go ahead, Robyn.
Well, that was one of the things that I really enjoyed about your book, was the piece. I mean, there was a lot, so I don't mean it that way, but the piece about the precepts, because I think that is such a place that, you know, regardless of your lineage, the way that you practice Reiki, the precepts are such a thing that you can connect to and help you, as you said, move more into the non-dual. They're tools that can also help you, and not just tools, they're also spiritual practices. So there's the depth as well, but that they can help move you into that place of non-duality. And so can you just talk a little bit more about that and kind of how you talk about that in your book? Because I know it's longer in your book and maybe even longer than what we have time for here today, but just really explain, an overview of explaining to like the listeners, like what you mean by that.
Well, it was interesting. I just had dinner with a friend and we were kind of, it's a non-Reiki practitioner. So he doesn't practice anything specifically. And we were just talking and the word spirituality came up. And she said, yeah, but Frans, she said, if I look at you, you don't come over as what we would classify someone spiritual, like the way you act, the way you, because sometimes we see that, we think spirituality, we have to put on a spiritual voice. We have to be all like, oh, now we like this, or we might need to wear something very spiritual, or we have prayer beads and those kind of things. And I'm definitely not that, I say all sorts of interesting language and things. And, I said, yeah, but for me, spirituality is actually just being kind and compassionate, and if we look at all of these traditional teachings, no matter if we look at yoga or Taoism or Buddhism or all of these traditional teachings, it's all about being a compassionate human being. Just be kind, right? And we might see visions, we might become clairvoyant or whatever, but at the same time, we still have to be kind. They are actually just side effects of our spiritual practice, so to speak. And so for me, therefore, the precepts are a very important tool. And as I say, we can talk about, oh, I'm being kind, I have no anger, I have no worry. That is very easy to say, but to actually embody that in our daily life, as we all know, is a very different ball game. And for example, I'm not always happy about it, but I'm actually happy about it. My teacher in Japan, they really test you on this, like we don't really do this anymore. So when I go and stay at his monastery, or little temple, then he is checking if I've been practicing. Can I stay kind and compassionate without anger and worry if he pushes me? And he literally pushes these buttons, really trying to provoke you in a way to see if it's not just an intellectual way or embodiment way. And if we also know that if we look at the precepts, then imagine, if you be angry for the whole day, then I feel really depleted. If I'm worrying the whole day, I feel really tired at the end of the day. So therefore, the precepts are also a tool or an indication showing us how to preserve our energy. And by doing this, then if we practice with less anger and less worry, we feel actually more energy within our whole being. And therefore, that starts to emanate more and more. I have a funny story. I actually don't like telling it, but it is a true story. And maybe
Really?
this indicates the way. So when it was COVID here, all the cafes and restaurants were closed, but you could still get takeaway coffee. So I walked to this little coffee shop. I come a lot, and they had a little, the door was in half, so you could just order coffee for takeaway. So I ordered takeaway coffee and a little piece of cake. And behind me, 2 women are standing. And I say, oh, good morning, ladies. And just like that, not much. And then I walk away. And 2 hours later, I do a long walk through town. I come back to the coffee shop and I go like, well, maybe on the way back, I have one more coffee. And the lady, Anna Marie, who owns the coffee shop, said, oh, Frans, I just want to tell you this, what just happened before when you were ordering coffee. So there was these two ladies behind you, and she said, when you left, they were talking to each other. And he said, the one lady said, oh, do you know this guy? And she goes, no, I don't really know him, but I see him around a lot. And always he says hello to me, smiles. And when I see him, because he feels so light and happy, I feel good myself. And so Anna Marie said, oh, I heard them talking like this. And for me, this is Reiki, you know, it's not always that we need to do hands-on healing, but through our way of being, that we can be kind and compassionate and smile to people, that already uplifts people. Like these two ladies felt already uplifted by me just saying, hi, how are you, a little whatever. And for me, that goes so much further than hands-on healing, because hands-on healing is a little bit limited. We cannot walk in town and do hands-on healing on everybody, right? We get arrested. But we can walk around town by walking around as this great bright light of kindness and love, this, oh, I don't know, just simple little things. It's not that difficult ultimately. And therefore, for me, the precepts are really pointing that out, that, as Mikao Usui said also in the precepts, today, so it's not tomorrow, that today, can we, in all the actions we do, can we walk around or sit at a work or in a relationship without anger, without worry, being kind, being grateful, being true to our way in our being. And that in itself is the most profound blessing. A, we can give ourselves, and B, we can give other people. As we all know, you know it, how we have to look at the news, how now we live in such a divided world, and we actually need more kind people, so to speak.
I think some people are even surprised by the kindness, and that also is another element of it. And I think what I experience with kindness and really enveloping and embracing that precept and ideal is that not only am I being kind, I actually am kind.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And receive the kindness. It's a flow of the energy, and it's effortless.
It ultimately needs to be effortless. Yeah. In the beginning, we might need to put a little bit of effort in it, but over time it becomes effortless. And I always see it. I'm drinking here some water. If I stick my fingers in the water, it's wet. So I cannot take the wetness out of water. And so the light of our true nature, or great bright light, or whatever we call it, that Reiki is compassion. I cannot divide that, and so therefore, for me, the precepts is saying that actually it does two things, the precepts. It's saying, first of all, that right now, our essence is no anger, no worry, being grateful, being true to our way, and being compassionate right now. But we don't see it. We often have covered it up with anger and worry and fear and anxiety. It's just the same. It's dark now. It's evening. It's 8:30 p.m. And I might say, well, I don't see the sun. It's out. But of course, that is not really true. The sun is still there. No one has switched the sun off. So, but we don't see it. So it's the same. Often we don't see our true essence, what is no anger, no worry. So first of all, the precepts is pointing to that. And then we all know how difficult it is. So Mikao Usui put very specific practices like hands-on healing, symbols and mantras, meditations, Reiju, the precepts themselves within his system to help us that maybe one day that we can live our life like that in all we do, 24 hours a day, through practicing and applying these teachings. So it is the beginning, and yet it's also the outcome, like the precepts. It's our starting off point, but it's also hopefully one day that we can embody the precepts in all we do in its fullest.
Yeah, excuse me. I agree. It is this place that you get to where you are able to put your practices into actual practice over
Yeah.
time. But at
Yeah.
first it is challenging. And so being able to return to them is what is helpful, because you do need those kind of, those mantras, those
Yeah.
ideas, those tools to help you be there, because we're human. We
Yeah.
live in duality, and we are duality by nature. And what are the places that we get to that we're not doing so much, but we're rather just being? And I think that there is part of Reiki that you're doing, like the hands-on healing, some of those kinds of things that have some of your practices that are doing. But how, like you said, like the part of Reiki that, and Colleen, the part of Reiki that you work towards and hopefully get to is just the being in your life and all of those around you. And even those places when you may be triggered by unkindness, or might be angry, all of those places that, because I feel
It
like it's
does happen.
unrealistic. Huh?
It does happen.
Well, yeah, it's
Yeah.
unrealistic to say that it's never going to happen,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
but you try to move into those places where you are able to move through it and get back to those places of like, okay, I'm going to be
Yeah.
Reiki in all of those pieces, that bright white light. I love you saying that, because I think so many of us, that's what we consider Reiki, is we are trying to get to a place of, we embody that bright white light and we shine it through wherever we are and around whoever we are. And also, Colleen, as you said, receive the bright white light within all that is around us, and that is everybody contains within. Sometimes they don't feel it or they don't act through that, but it still is contained within all of us. The keys.
Absolutely. I mean, it's who we, like in one of the booklets, what was given out by the Usui Gakkai, it said, like that everything is Reiki, so everything is Reiki, everything is the universe. And we just have to remember that. And as you say, it's not easy. That's why we have those tools like mantras and symbols, etc., to really fall back upon, to say, okay, actually, I'm getting really pissed off here. Is there a tool for me, what I can help me to quieten down, to relax again, to maybe forgive the person? And I like also what you say, to receive, because for me, it's hands-on healing is a great example on ourselves and other people, because when we do hands-on healing, we don't do it with a fist, we do it with an open hand. And the open hand is a great example, because if I want to give someone, I have to open my hand, but to receive, I also have to open my hand. So in Japan, a very old word of giving, ju, and is also receiving. And in a very old way of writing that was two open hands, and it's the open hand of receiving and giving. And so it's actually simultaneously, right? If I give you a hug, I say Frans is giving Colleen a hug, but at the same time, I'm getting a lot of benefit from it too, if we hug it in the right space, right? So even that we see it from one viewpoint, Frans is giving Colleen a hug, because we say, oh, Frans is walking over and then hugging you. So we see it from one viewpoint in a way, but at the same time, I'm also receiving. Or sometimes I use the imagery of a cat, or like I go to this little cafe and there's a dog who I love, Bobby. And Bobby, when I come to the cafe, I call it my surrogate dog, comes and hops on my lap, and I pet Bobby and give Bobby a snuggle. Bobby loves it. So we can tell Frans is snuggling or patting Bobby, but at the same time, Bobby gets benefit from it, and you can see Bobby all go, that feels good. But at the same time, I'm starting to feel good too. And so for me, this is also when we do hands-on healing, we might say, oh, Frans is doing hands-on healing on Colleen. But if I'm in the right space of mind, then I'm also the receiver, because as soon as I touch you, you're automatically touching me. Touching is always a two-way street, right?
Well, I think for myself, that has been one of the biggest healings that Reiki has done and empowerment that Reiki has done for me is the teaching me how to receive while I give.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
so,
like I always say in the classes, I mean, we often in class, we talk about, you know, how to give between brackets treatment. I said, but we can do a 2-month class on how to receive, because one wonderful thing I noticed when I lived in the Himalayas, and I was doing for a year a lot of volunteer treatments in Darjeeling, these people were so open to receive. They had no idea what Reiki was. They just laid down and I did hands-on healing, no questions asked, no questions asked. And so then after doing that for a year, we went to Australia and I thought, oh, this is great. I want to do this in nursing homes, etc. So finally we were allowed. You know, it takes time, as you know, you have to go through the whole rigmarole. So finally we were allowed to go and do hands-on healing in a home for elderly people. And then the first day I went there and we had a lot of half an hour time for people. I think I did one treatment. I had booked all these different people and all they wanted to do first was, yeah, but what is it? What do I feel? Do you believe in God? Where are you going to touch me? Oh, sorry, half an hour is finished. Oh, okay, maybe next time then. Then we're going to the next one. Same thing. And yet where I lived in Darjeeling, no questions. They were just so, you're coming to help me? Do whatever you need to do. There was so much trust. And I think when we trust that process, so if you do hands-on healing on me, Colleen, then I need to trust you. I need to be really saying, oh, whatever Colleen or Robyn is doing, I need to be really wide open. And I sometimes make this funny joke that, say, Robyn is doing a hands-on healing on me and she start up a chainsaw, right? That I still go like, okay, she knows what she's doing. I'm trusting her, right? Because then I give you 100% trust. Then I'm really open. But that doesn't often happen, right? In the beginning, we feel, oh, what's going to happen, or et cetera, et cetera. So it takes a while to be very open and trusting the process, trusting yourself, trusting the practitioner or the teacher.
and I think as a practitioner too, although Reiki is still doing the work, whether the practitioner is nervous or concerned about their abilities, but I also think that's true for practitioners, is that's part of the process too, is learning to trust it, learning to let the Reiki energy flow through and do that work. And I liked how you talked about it. It's not always in a hands-on formal session. Oftentimes that flows through just in your ordinary life, walking around and engaging with your life.
Yeah. You know, for me, and again, from a very traditional Japanese approach, the hands is the first point of call, because this is how we touch everything, right? I touch the microphone with my hands, or my cup of tea, or but ultimately that luminosity is coming from every single cell of your body. And, you know, I now get clients who come before, and particularly this was in COVID, they booked in a treatment, and not that they wanted hands-on healing. We just sat opposite each other in that great bright light space, and they received the same healing as hands-on healing in a way. But of course, again, we need to be willing to see this and to say, not to ourselves, oh, it's only when I'm being touched, then it's happening. Because ultimately, and this is also what I explain in the book, is that when we look at the kanji of Reiki, particularly Rei, traditionally the kanji meant a shaman praying for rain. And this was not rain, wet rain, but it was a universal rain. And realizing that this universal rain is falling 24 hours a day. So we can access this healing 24 hours a day if we want to. I mean, for example, if I often do this in class and I say, okay, can you all show me how you touch universal energy? And some people, they put their hands forward and go like this with their palms. Some people look a bit baffled and go like, I don't know. And some people say, I don't have to do anything because I'm touching it already. I'm touching it already inside and outside. So therefore, that potential is 24 hours a day, is already there.
I'm glad you brought that part of the book up, because I was really interested in, because then you went from the rain to then all of the elements and the frozen water idea. And so you want to talk a little bit about that part?
Kanji.
Yeah, I mean, for example, first of all, we made up almost 70% of water. And so this is also why in these old traditions, we see often a lot of mention of these natural elements. And so the rain is water, but if we solidify the water, then the quality of still is wet, but it's all frozen, right? We cannot wash ourselves with frozen water. So if I have lots of anger and worry, we all know it, my whole body tension, there's a tension in my body. We become more constricted. My voice becomes more constricted, less flowing. So it's like we become frozen, like an ice cube. And through the practice, and I think, particularly people who've practiced hands-on healing or the meditation practice, we might feel some heat here and there. So that's that inner heat. To melt a frozen ice cube, we need to heat it up. So therefore, through the practice of that heat, we start to melt this frozen water, this anger, this worry inside of us, and then we can flow more and more through life. And say, for example, Robyn, if I'm angry and I'm this frozen ice cube and you're angry, then we clash all the time, right? We're like two ice cubes bumping into each other. But now imagine if that one ice cube melts, then that other person is just flowing around, right? Then there's less friction. And then if both of us, we melt, then we really start to realize we one and the same, right? Then all what is left is just compassion and kindness and non-duality, interconnectedness. Because then I cannot divide the water, what at that time I labeled Robyn and Frans, because we have two separate ice cubes. But now when I both melt them, I cannot divide that water of Robyn and the water of Frans, because it's become one fluid openness. And then automatically what comes forward is love and compassion. And so for me, we can really clearly see these kind of teachings within the kanji of Reiki, within the precepts, for example, but also within the symbols and mantras and the meditation practices like Joshin Kokyo or Seisin Toitsu, traditionally taught within the system of Reiki in Japan.
And I hope, sorry, Colleen, I hope I get this right too. Then the fire continues to heat the water to become into steam, which turns into the universal rain, right?
Yeah, maybe it's a natural process. Like rain falls, right, on the earth, the sun heats it up, the mist rises. Actually, I live on the 11th floor of an apartment, and I live above, or not above, but I look upon a park. So it's nice sometimes when it's rainy and then the sun comes and the mist, it's really stunning. And so it's a natural cycle, and we all have this inner natural cycle as well. But if we stay frozen, then we cannot feel that flow of energy through our body. And therefore, in the kanji of ki, we see, for example, a rise, and we see vapor or steam. And we all know we cannot rise, we cannot eat raw, we have to cook it. And traditionally, this gave us a lot of energy. In the olden days, was particularly in Japan and China, when rice was the normal food. In Holland, we have potatoes, so that doesn't work. But in those countries, so therefore we have the kanji of ki, we had to boil the rice. We have to cook it. So there also is hidden within the kanji is fire. And we have to cook it at the bottom of the pot, right? We don't put the fire above the pot. And so the fire in a lot of these traditions in Japan is really in your, or just below your belly button. But even if you look at traditional Tibetan teachings, for example, and traditional yogic teachings, you also see that they all work with these energy centers, first developing the lower part of those energy centers to stabilize that, to be really grounded and centered in your own body, because this is also, my body is the vehicle where I take that energy with me into my daily life. So for me, working with Reiki or meditation is not zoning out and being in la la land. Of course, that's nice once in a while, but it's actually being really clear, wide awake, and yet in this very wide open state of mind of luminosity, but that we be able to drive a car or operate difficult machinery, because then we can take it with us in difficult situations in our daily life.
And so you describe that also with ki, and the way that the fire, works with the rice, and the rice steams and then becomes rain, and that is that natural flow.
Yeah. And I think, when we meditate and when we do hands-on healing, when we do these more traditional practices, and again, we can see this very similar in Taoism, in yoga, in Tibetan Buddhism, where we can really start to feel that inner flow from, say, your belly button or even lower, your perineum, all the way up to your crown. We might start to feel this in yoga, for example, inner bliss. Or in Tibetan Buddhist practices, they have a very specific name for it, like blazing and dripping. We see all of this in these very old ancient teachings. And Mikao Usui brought this also within the system of Reiki, but unfortunately not always taught. Yeah.
Yeah, and the physical aspect. And then I love in your description with the precepts, in your book, talking about how the words just for today, or excuse me, or only, and the meaning of those in traditional Japanese understanding. So can you share about that? Also the other parts of the precepts of what those actually mean?
Yeah, I mean, like if we really look at, for example, the word today, we think, oh, this is just Mikao Usui, but actually in Zen, it's a very common practice. My teacher, his teacher, was a very, very famous priest in Japan. And like everybody knows Sakai Daiajari, very famous in Japan. And in their tradition also, like today, at this moment of the day, we have to infuse it with this kindness and love and openness. And it was really all pointing out, like in Zen, don't get distracted by the past and future, stay focused on now. Because often, if we look again about anger, we often angry about what happened 2 minutes ago, 1 minute ago, 1 second ago, or 10 years ago. We carried it with us. Or when we worry, we were about what will happen in 2 minutes or in 2 hours or in 5 years or in 10 years. So the precepts already, by anger and worry, it's pointing out to past and future. And so also, for example, the word no or not in Japan, in Zen, it actually points out emptiness. And so when we have this direct experience of emptiness, or for example, I like very much Mikao Usui, and again, in all of these traditions, even in Christianity, they talk about light. So let's imagine light instead of emptiness, because empty, then we get a little bit sometimes caught up. But in light, if I have a sticky note, right, like one of those yellow M4 or M3 notes, I can't remember how you call them.
Post-it notes.
Post-it notes. Thank you. So normally we stick all these post-it notes on ourselves and on other people. I'm not good enough. I can't do it. I'm angry, right? Because we are very physical. We like this ice cube. But now imagine we are made of light, right? Light is a non-solid form. So I cannot stick anything on it. Nothing sticks on light. So if nothing sticks on light, automatically, no anger, no worry, right? Because nothing sticks on it. So therefore, the word no or not in Japan, in the Zen traditions, for example, really emphasize emptiness or light. And therefore, when it says not angry, it means actually when we realize, when we have this direct experience of emptiness, of light, then automatically the quality is not angry because nothing sticks to light, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like to how you explain emptiness, no or not, in the book, just for the listeners, because I do think in the West, we think of emptiness as like it has a somewhat of a negative connotation, that there's like,
Yes.
that it's bad.
Yeah.
But in Eastern, emptiness isn't bad. It's like, I like that analogy of the light, of it being, you're in your non-duality when you're in that state.
Yeah, another way of really saying is actually emptiness is full of everything, but not attached to anything. We're not clinging to anything. We're not, again, when I think about healing is with an open hand. When I grasp something, then my hand closes and then I hold on to the past or I hold on to the future, and then I get caught up with anger. Oh, you did this 10 years ago to me, and then I'm still angry about it. I'm still pissed off about it, etc. And therefore I cannot be kind to you or open and loving. But that is just a hand grasping on something. But when we open that hand, or sometimes we can say let go, when we open the hand, then automatically nothing sticks in an open hand. It can come and go. And therefore automatically no anger, no worry. So that is really what Mikao Usui pointed out within the precepts. It's really our great bright light, our essence has the quality of no anger, no worry. And that again is indicated by the word no or not, emphasizing that emptiness or being of light where nothing sticks.
Talk a little bit about the work precept, because I think out of the precepts, obviously compassion, anger, worry, like those ones are easier for everybody to kind of come to a consensus on. What the work precept, I would say, is one that I thought was fascinating too, and also probably the one that, not that people argue about it, I don't mean it that way, but kind of have our own like spin on what it,
well, what does that, it's like, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, like the thing with Japanese kanji is that one kanji can mean 10, 20, 30 different things. So then if we translate it, which word are we going to pick? That depends on the translator. And that also depends on the translator's own inclination. And it depends on the translator's spiritual experience. So very tricky. So for example, what we call work in that particular kanji means work, but also practice, also karma, and also means pure experience. So if we translate it as work hard, in our modern thing, then we think, oh, we have to work hard in my work, in my 9-to-5 job. But if we translate it as practice, then we can also say, well, practice this. What do you mean practice this? Well, practice being not angry, not worried, being compassionate, etc. Right? So then already we have a very different idea about the relationship within the precepts themselves. For example, Hiroshi Doi, a Japanese Reiki teacher, he translated that precepts as something as do what you're meant to do, because be true to your pure experience, through your karma, right? And I like the translation of be true to your way and your being. And that is a double thing, that is be true to your way. Like, for example, the way Colleen does hands-on healing is very different than Frans does hands-on healing, than Robyn does hands-on healing. And for the simple fact already that if we place our hands, if I place my hands on your hands, Colleen, or to Robyn's hands, we might already see that there is a different size, right? So if I put my hands on someone's knee, maybe my hands are quite, or I've got very slim hands, but my fingers are very long. So the way I hold the knee might encapsulate the whole knee, but maybe for a person who has a small hand might not be. Or maybe one person cannot stand that long, so they do hands-on healing sitting, while another person does it standing. So there's already different ways, true? Right. So, but at the same time, we also have to infuse that different way with our essence, with that luminosity of kindness. So that is being true to my way and my being. So the being means being true to that compassion and kindness, to my essence, to that love, unconditional love, unconditional compassion. And yet I perform the treatment different than Colleen or Robyn or Betty, but the quality of it is the same. But at the same time, Colleen and Robyn also infuse it with their natural love and compassion and kindness. So there's different layers to it.
Such a great explanation. Thank you. I do find that is probably one of the most common questions about the precepts. People ask about them.
And then, you know, Colleen, what I sometimes say then to people, so which one should I use? I said, use both, right?
Right.
Because sometimes I need to practice harder. I need to practice diligently. Sometimes I need to be more true to my way, my being, right? It's the same in the old translation. We used to translate it in the beginning when the system of Reiki came to the West, be honest, right? And then we looked at the precepts in Japanese, and then actually it says be grateful. And then some people say, Frans, so do I need to use be honest or be grateful? And again, say use both, because sometimes I need to be more honest and sometimes I need to be more grateful. So, but this is again, I come back to that ice cube idea, right? When we really are a little bit frozen, then we find it very difficult. Then we say it's either this or it's that, right? We because our frozenness makes it less flexible. But when we more fluid, then also we can be more flexible and say, well, actually today I use being honest, or today I use practice being diligently, and tomorrow I use it differently because of today I'm different. Today I need to maybe throw a little bit more grateful in the soup of today. And today I need to be practicing a little bit more diligently. And tomorrow, what is then also today, right? Because as soon as I enter tomorrow, it becomes today. Then it's maybe slightly different. Then I go like, oh, actually, today I need to be more true to my way and my being, and actually be more grateful or honest, etc. But we can only do this when we soften up, when we've become a little bit more flexible in our own mind.
Well, and that when we're in that flow, to also, you know, and part of that receiving is also remembering that it gets to be what we need too, you know,
Absolutely.
that is,
Yeah.
When we're receiving, is that, you know, one day we do need to, we always think of it as like, okay, well, how can I use each one because of what I'm doing, but that if we are also receiving from Reiki and helping us to melt that ice cube, melt that ice or those many ice cubes that we might have, that it also gets to be what we need for the day, even if what we need is that we need to work a little hard, not work harder, but like more into our practices, things like that. That might be what we need. And then other days it might be that it gets to be what we need at the same time as much as.
Yeah, I had a great experience once. I was teaching in New York, and I went to this lovely restaurant. And I was sitting there, and the tables were, after the class, the tables were really close to each other. And there was two more older women in their 40s and a young kid. And they were just being served. And I look and I go, wow, whatever this lady has, this is great. So I asked, well, what are you eating? And then I know what to order. And she goes, this and this. She said, what do you want to taste? And she put a little bit on a plate and gave it to me. So it was very easily open. And then we chatted briefly. And she said, well, the way she said it was just blew my mind. And she goes like, well, I've got cancer, but I'm actually really grateful that I have cancer. And I said, can you please for me elaborate on that? Because I've just been teaching a Reiki class and we use the word grateful. I said, but, I don't hear many people say that they are grateful that they've got cancer, right? So she said, well, it is like this. She said, when I started to have cancer, I started to reflect on my life. And she realized that she had a shitty job. It was very stressful, high maintenance. So she said, I quit my job. Then I realized that I was in a very shitty relationship. And I quit the relationship, I divorced. She said, so I went through my life and I deleted all the toxic things out of it. So through the cancer, I'm actually really grateful, but because it showed me what I had to let go of. She said, I still have cancer today, but I feel much happier than I've ever been in my life. So therefore, I'm really grateful for the cancer. And I thought, wow, because normally when we think about gratefulness, we think only about, between brackets, positive things, right? But actually it's about being grateful for whatever comes our way today, right? And it might not always be what we expect. So therefore, again, if we are being grateful only for, if we say, oh, I need to receive what I need and certain teachings come our way, right? And we're not grateful for it, then it becomes another obstacle. But if we can accept it again with an open hand, then we become grateful. And actually then even an illness like cancer, like this lady, for her, it was a massive teaching. And so therefore it becomes very empowering.
Yeah, I haven't had cancer, but I've had chronic illness that has lasted a long time. And during it, I don't know that I was able to be grateful for it, but certainly in retrospect, I can look back and the experiences that I gained from it. But I also find that when I am in challenge, simply inviting that Reiki energy of gratitude can illuminate the gratitude within me, where it can feel like effort at times to find the gratitude in a situation. And the Reiki energy will also add that gratitude and that frequency. And as you were saying, turn it on in every cell, the light goes on in every cell and can help us find that gratitude then.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it is in the beginning, we have to definitely put effort in it, right? It doesn't come easy. Practice doesn't come easy. The precepts, as we all know, don't come easy. I always say, if it's that easy, because sometimes people say, oh, just repeat it 3 times. And I go, well, if it was that easy, I would give it to all the people here in Amsterdam on a
We
piece of
live
paper.
in a different world if it was
Yeah,
that
and I say,
easy.
just recite it 3 times, and then Amsterdam would be the most compassionate city in the world. But we know it's not that easy. So in the beginning, we need to put effort to it. But it's like a violin player. In the beginning, the violin player needs to put a lot of effort into it. But after lots of effort, maybe one day they pick it up and it becomes effortless, right? So through lots of effort, it starts to become effortless. And hopefully, if we practice enough on a daily basis today, then the practice becomes more and more effortless, so that effortlessly we can embody their precepts more and more into all we do.
And let the Reiki energy help us get there too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, Frans, I want to make sure we still have time to talk more about your book. I'm going to hold it up. I don't know if it's going to be backwards, but
No,
this is what
forward.
it is. Okay. And that it's on Amazon. And a lot of what we've talked about is written about in the book. And I just think your explanations are so clear that I really love how you've written about them. So I just want to make sure that you have an opportunity also to talk more about your book, other than how we're talking about your book. And then also, I know that people will want to be able to find you and where are you teaching and things like that. So I want to make sure we have, Robin's going.
Let me just say, because we have a lot of people that listen to this rather than view it on YouTube.
Oh, right.
So it's called The Way of Reiki. So you held it up and we could see it, but the majority listen to this on the actual podcast form.
But that's okay.
That's what she held up.
Yeah, I like simple teachings for myself. I mean, I maybe I'm a simple guy, who knows, I don't know, but I like it for myself in my own mind, clear. And that is the first of all, I write first for myself. So I actually don't think like, now I'm going to write this down for a book to be able to be published. But first of all, I write it down to get it clear in my own head, and then it starts to flow out. And so, yeah, I'm really happy with this book, and I'm teaching all over the world. So next year, I'm teaching in Chicago, Cincinnati, New York, Italy a few times, Paris, Portugal, Japan, Holland, Germany. I'm probably missed some things.
Wow.
Australia.
So, schedule.
Yeah. So I love traveling. I always have loved traveling. And so it's great to do. I like working with people and hanging out with people. So for me, it's also kind of creating this wonderful global community of like-minded people like yourself. It's just so wonderful. Yes, we all practice in different ways. One way is not better than the other. As long as we can hold hands together, I think that is the most important element, because we all do our best, right? We all just do the way we like and we gravitate towards it. One makes a painting more abstract than the other one makes a painting in very clear imagery. It's still a painting, so it's just a different way. And so, yeah, I also do a lot of online. I don't teach necessarily Reiki 1, 2, or 3 online, but I do a lot of support online teachings. So, for example, at the moment, I'm having a 21-day evening, well, in Holland evening, but it goes globally, support. And this particular 21 days focuses on the Hara, or the Tanden. And so I do very specific elements, and it's all live online. So people also come. I do one-on-one sessions here in Holland, sometimes 1, 2, or 3, or 4 days, or a whole week, where we do like mentoring and teachings. I still do lots of hands-on healing on people because I love it. So yeah, all of those kind of things.
And so if someone wants to look up your online content also, is that on ihreiki.com?
That's it. Yeah, it's all there.
And that is IH. So I'm saying that as in International House Reiki.com. So to make sure people that can hear it. The other thing that I really like you do is your social media. You do a great job with your posts. And so just talk a little bit about that and how you share your message through social media.
Yeah, someone asked me the other day, said, Frans, do you do all your social media yourself or do you have someone doing it? I do it all myself. I'm a bit OCD with it. And so I like it in a way. I mean, if I wouldn't have a Reiki center per se, I probably would not have had social media, to be truthful. But for example, Facebook, I have 2 Facebooks account, Frans Stiene and International House of Reiki. And I try to do something lighthearted, but also something more serious, or a link to a blog or a picture or a quote. So I also feel different people read different things. So some people really like reading a blog. So I post 1 blog a day. And then some people like more an image, or post a little image with a little text. Some people like more quotes. So I post that too. And then on my Instagram account is more a little bit, not so much about Reiki, although I do post different quotes there as well, but also just about my daily life, what I'm hanging out with, some fun things. I like playing around, being silly and having fun in life. So that is my social media of Instagram is a little bit more playful. And then I like taking photographs. I'm not a photographer, but I like taking nice photographs. So when I travel, that is always great. So lots of pictures of, I was just recently in LA, so of the beautiful beaches, or of Seattle and surroundings of the forest, or I just yesterday evening, I walked around the town where I live and saw the little Christmas lights are up already and it looks so quaint. So I post those, and then I post some silly pictures of myself or doing handstands or headstands or something silly. So we have to keep laughing, I think, as well in life.
So true, right? Well, and that's, like I say, I really enjoy your social media posts. So I want to make sure that people can hear the names of them. So can you share those to make sure?
Yeah, so the Instagram is Frans Stiene, or actually Stiene Frans, I think it is. And Facebook is Frans Stiene or International House of Reiki.
Okay. And Stiene again is Stiene.
That's
and
it.
Frans is
Strange Dutch name.
Frans. Yeah, make sure that so people can find you, because you really do post a lot of great information, and and like you say, kind of a combination of different types of content. So as a person always paying attention to that, also I appreciate how others are just sharing a good message. Like I feel like you post really positive but helpful, not just positive like quote positive, but very beneficial is a good word for it, content too.
Well, for example, like I post a quote a day, and it's not that I just pick random quotes. I actually, again, first write them down myself or read them in a book, and then I think, oh, this is really good. How does it apply to my practice? How does it apply to my life? And because I get something out of it, then I share it. So it's for me also a little bit more. For me, these quotes also reflects my own personal journey in a way.
Well, and one of the things that we really talk about, having, been practicing Reiki even before social media or websites, even before websites, and how I do believe that we are all contributing into this global communication. And
Absolutely,
that
yeah.
as we share, even here, that we can do this kind of sharing and talking and being community and creating community globally. I just think that it's that really good message is so meaningful
It's
in
so
today's
needed
world.
as well, isn't it? Yeah, I
Yeah.
think specifically these days where there's so much division, I think therefore it's really important that we show that, yes, we teach in different ways, but we don't need that division. We can still hold hands and be kind, compassionate human beings, right?
And be community.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and
because I
be
think,
this wonderful community.
we're all
Yeah.
on the same page, is that however we get to the place of that
Absolutely.
are more of that bright white light, that's what matters and what
Yeah.
speaks to us to move to that place.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. 100%. Yeah, that's so beautiful.
Well, I think again, we're up at time. So I want to make sure that we again just say this is Frans Stiene, and you can find his information at ihreiki.com, and also Frans Stiene or Stiene Frans on social media. And then the book, and not just this book, but your other books are also excellent as well. And so, but this particular one is the brand new one. And you were talking about quotes. I also love all the quotes that you have in this book. They're so clarifying.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons there's a couple of different reasons why I put them in it. Because when I read those kind of people, their work, I really get so much out of it myself. And for me, I really see a reflection of the system of Reiki. So most of them are from Japanese traditions. And therefore, and also to indicate and to show that Mikao Usui was not just picking these teachings out of thin air, that all of these teachers were talking about exactly the same thing, and that Mikao Usui just borrowed elements of these existing Japanese spiritual practices. And when we start to see this, I think we get a much broader perspective of the system of Reiki. And then when we have this broader view, it becomes easier to practice it and apply it, and to really also see more the inner teachings of Mikao Usui, the inner depth, what he was trying to show us. So a couple of different reasons I put those quotes in my book.
Yeah, they're really, they're fun to read, but also, like you say, they connect the relevance of it all, and they connect I think in one part you talk about the ancient, how the ancient, one of the quotes is how the ancient is the same as today.
Yeah.
And, I really have enjoyed that part of it as well.
Thanks. Yeah, for myself, I still pick up my book, not necessarily to read my writings, but to go like, okay, like I just pick a page number and I go like, oh, well, yeah, which quote is on that page, and then just reflect on it again, because learning never stops, right?
We're always the
Hopefully.
student.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, hopefully not. That's it.
I know that was one of my things this morning, that I also believe that Reiki energy activates our curiosity.
Yeah.
And how important it is. I'm so glad I still have so much curiosity and interest.
Yeah. But I think also when we practice more and we, that ice cube is melting again, we become more playful again, like we become in a way less serious. And then it's a little bit like these young kids, like they're 5, they still are so curious about things. And then because they're not that frozen yet with education, with school systems, with what mom and dad or society tells us. And therefore we can see this curiosity in these little kids. They investigate everything. And when we keep practicing and melting this frozenness, so to speak, that anger and that worry, etc., then we become much more playful and curious. And that helps us also, again, is fuel for our personal practice, our further development.
Yeah, absolutely. And resourcefulness, because
Yeah,
that's the other part. Little kids are endlessly resourceful.
absolutely. Yeah.
That childlike wonder.
It is. I love it.
Yes. And so also one more time, you are traveling globally and teaching classes. So since most of our listeners are here in the US, some of the cities you're still coming to in 2023?
Yeah, so Chicago, at the moment, we have planned Chicago, Cincinnati, and Chicago. I do some Shimpoden Reiki 3 classes and also Reiki retreats. I often go to Seattle, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Lancaster in Pennsylvania. I'm probably going to North Carolina, is planned for 2024, a retreat there. I think 2024, I probably will be speaking at the Omega Institute. Yes, so it keeps me entertained.
Yes, it does. Well, thank you again so much. We have just really enjoyed spending this time with you. Thank you for being
Well, thank you,
here.
Colleen and Robyn. Very nice. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
thank
thank
so
you
much,
for your
Rob.
writing.
Yeah,
It's really,
it's nice to meet you. And for us, again, you can find us at reikilifestyle.com.
yes.
All right. Thanks, everyone.